All right, so we will start with our land and sport acknowledgement. So at this time, we would like to give thanks to the creator for giving us the game of lacrosse. Lacrosse is medicine to the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse. We want to thank them for sharing this medicine with the world. We'd also like to give thanks to all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as we all sit in their territories. We say thank you to the creator for giving us Mother Earth. She then gave us the tree that our sticks are made from. This is the true roots of the medicine we call lacrosse today. Thank you. My name is Hannah Burnett. I'm the OWFL Director of Officiating. I'm a level 4 official, so I'm certified internationally. And I started out much like some of your kids when I was 14 years old playing in high school. I went to St. Clair Secondary in Whitby and grew up playing Blue Knights, House League, and then a little bit of rep. And I played Team Ontario U17 before moving into the OUA and playing at Wilfrid Laurier University for my university career. Highly recommend as you maybe start getting up into the U15, U19 ages, you're thinking about school beyond. I started officiating in 2009, and tonight's call is definitely going to have an official's lens because we're going to get into the rules of the game and some modifications that we have at the U13, U15, and U19 levels. But I also like to upfront remind people that I was a player and that I coached for a long time too. I coached at Laurier, I coached with some private schools, and I coached with Team Ontario as well. And so I always do try and bring that lens into the work that we do to educate around the league. So for all the officiating stuff that we will touch on tonight, I will try and throw some coaching stuff, some player tips throughout the call. And I'm also a huge film nerd, so you can just enjoy that photo of me at my my mom's Oscar party in, I believe, 1998. So thank you.
What?
In addition to being involved in Ontario lacrosse, I'm also the official in charge of Lacrosse Canada. I have a role with the World Lacrosse Rules Committee for World Lacrosse, so I'm absolutely a rules nerd and happy to chat about this stuff as we go through. So again, please feel free to interact with any questions and we'll get through the content tonight. Be about 90 minutes, and if you need to duck off a little bit early, the call will be recorded and will be shared out after the fact. Our goals for tonight, I'm looking to contextualize the game of women's field lacrosse and our sport's unique history for you guys. I'd like to provide a brief overview, very brief, of what the OWFL does and our programming. I'll introduce the U13, U15, and U19 game, including the modifications that are specific to these levels of play. They're very similar between those three levels, which is why we do them together on these calls. I'm looking to build avenues for spectators and coaches to inform themselves and contribute hopefully to a positive environment for our athletes and our officials on the field through education. And I'm really looking to foster an appreciation for this phenomenal game. If you're new to the women's field sector, but have been part of field or box, or you got involved with sixes, women's field can definitely be its own thing, but increasingly starting to look like the other sectors while still maintaining its identity. So we'll look into that a little bit. As an all too compact history to understand where we're coming from for the women's field game, Indigenous culture and community form the foundation for all lacrosse in all of its forms. As we mentioned in the land acknowledgement, lacrosse is a gift from the creator to the Haudenosaunee people. And in the OWFL, we're really grateful to continue to have Haudenosaunee athletes playing and competing, coaches playing or competing, and to have an Indigenous presence within our game in Ontario is really important to us. Into the 2000s, the women's game was arguably one of the closer versions of the game that looked like the creator's game. We did not have hard boundaries, no lined boundaries until 2005, which is wild. And players still wear limited equipment to this day. The women's field as a discipline appeared in Scotland in the 1800s, inspired by versions of the men's game that had been seen in North America. And it was popularized in Canada around the 1980s. We still have an official who was a member of the inaugural Team Canada team, and people around the league that are still involved in the OWFL. And we're really excited to have that presence around. OWFL athletes have the opportunity to compete on the international stage, either for Team Canada or for Team Haudenosaunee. And then increasingly, we're seeing athletes from the OWFL represent maybe the country that their grandparents came from or stuff like that. We have people that represented at the last World Box Championships for Ireland and Germany and Netherlands, in addition to Haudenosaunee and Canada. So really cool for OWFL athletes to have opportunities to compete on the international stage. And looking forward, lacrosse in the sixes format is going to be Olympic bound for the women in 2028, which is really exciting. And just before we move any further, just a note, so this slide deck will be shared. If you're looking for more information on all the stuff we're going to get into, take a look at the notes section. So if you were the presenter, you'd have like the little notes under the slide deck at the end. In that section, there's a whole bunch of additional links to content that's going to be shared. When we get into the fouls, there's links to specific fouls so you can see what the videos look like to see those fouls in action. And then for the history stuff, we've got a couple of extra things from Lacrosse Canada in there as well for you. Women's lacrosse, it's definitely our own thing. It's a unique sport. I think a lot of people involved in the sport would tell you that we don't really want to wear more equipment and we don't really want to play with box sticks. We quite like it this way. Our sticks are unique. They have shallow pockets. We'll get into that in a little more detail. The game is evolved to be fast-paced and highly skilled. And while the play is really akin to basketball, officiating and the rules of women's lacrosse end up being a little bit more like basketball and soccer combined. And while there's room for change, and there's definitely a lot of changes in the women's field game, we do like it this way. And I do think that it's on the right path forward. There will be a few more changes coming down the road in the future, I would anticipate, but it's going in a good direction. What does the OWFL do? So our mandate is to provide opportunities for girls and women to participate in women's field lacrosse in the province of Ontario. We currently are responsible for running all rep programming in Ontario, culminating in a provincial championship for U9 through U19, and introducing a couple years ago our Jewel, which is our U19 Elite League programs. We are also responsible for organizing the women's lacrosse component of the Ontario Summer Games. I actually just found out that the 2026 games are going to be in Waterloo region, so a region very familiar to the women's lacrosse community. If we end up doing Ontario Summer Games at Rim Park, no one will be surprised, but looking forward to that in 2026 as well. And our role as officials. So fouls in women's lacrosse occur frequently throughout the game, on and off ball, kind of like basketball. Some fouls will result in a quick stoppage of play where the player who was fouled restarts of their own volition, and others require officials to step in and set up the foul in a very specific way. The lines in the field are often used for those setups. Really dangerous and unsportsmanlike play also results in stoppages of the time, of the clock, and of cards being awarded to offending players. So officials play an important role in managing the game to keep players safe, to keep the game fair, and to allow players to play to their greatest potential. Thanks, Olivia. And who are the group of officials that will be on your kids' games or on your games this summer? Generally, we have between 70 and 100 officials in the OWFL register annually. About 40% of those officials are under the age of 18. So for the people on this call, U13 to U19, you'll tend to have more senior officials or more experienced officials on your games. But U13 is kind of our introductory period for officials to get their feet wet on a full-size field game with the real rules of lacrosse. So for U13, you will definitely have a variety of officials in your game, from somebody like me who has world lacrosse experience at a World Cup down to somebody who's potentially in their first or their second year of officiating. So we do ask that you and your coaches work with us through that. Without officials, we can't have our games. But again, about 40%, almost half of our officials are under 18. About 25 of our officials are college or university aged, and many of them play in the NCAA or in the college, in the university system in Ontario. A lot of them come back, and it's a great way to increase their lacrosse IQ. So super exciting. Only 30% of our officials are adults, like true adults over 23 out of college. And only 3 of our 80 officials last year were dudes. So very proud to be a predominantly female group in a predominantly female sport. For U13 in particular, you might see a third official or a fourth official sitting at the timekeeper's table in the summer. And that is a mentor. Mentors are experienced officials who are tasked with providing feedback to the on-field officials and liaising with coaches to create a positive environment for returning and new officials to develop and grow. If you don't see anybody at U15 and U19, still know that there are people there supporting the officials on the field. Those are evaluators, and when evaluators are watching a game, they're watching from the stands. So they're providing feedback sometimes at halftime, definitely after the game. But on U13 games, you will see the official sitting and a senior official sitting right at the center of the field. Sometimes I feel like my friend Charlie Day here from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia explaining this game. The rules can be unique. They can be different if you're coming from a different sector of lacrosse, like men's field or box. We used to get a lot of questions like, why? And I'm really pleased to say that there's been a lot of rule changes heading into this season that kind of eliminate some of the questions like, well, we do it this way. Why do you guys do it that way? But bear with me as we get through some of the logistics here. It'll help provide some context for things moving forward. So the rules that we use in the OWFL actually start all the way at the top. World Lacrosse is our international governing body, kind of like in hockey, the IIHF. And World Lacrosse writes the rule book that we use. From there, Lacrosse Canada gets to step in, and Lacrosse Canada has the option to say, we want to do the rules, but we want to change this. And so they have the opportunity to implement their own modifications that we would then have to abide by. This year, Lacrosse Canada didn't have anything to say, so no changes from World Lacrosse to Lacrosse Canada level. So that leaves us as the Ontario body choosing to make some development-oriented rule modifications for particularly our youngest levels. And we do have some going up through U15 into U19. As this is the age group where you might also, maybe your kid's playing on a travel program or you're taking the team down to the US for an extra tournament or two. It's also can be frustrating for our athletes when they go to somewhere in the US and there's a different rule set. You might hear them use different terms. Like if Ontario, we use 11 and 15 to describe our lines. In the US, they say 8 and 12. And that's just because they're measuring the same lines from a different point on the field. So it's all the same, but you might have different rules. In the US, they're not working from the World Lacrosse rulebook. They have different rulebooks for youth lacrosse. For tournaments, they might have specific rules. Their high school league has its own rulebook. The NCAA definitely has its own rulebook with some very specific changes. And then Athletes Unlimited was the professional women's field organization, but unfortunately it was shut down recently. There is still a professional women's league. It is sixes. It's called the WLL. And then in addition to this, there's variations of our game played around the world. So if you're curious about rules, we are going to play with the World Lacrosse rulebook. Starting in U13 up through U19 and Jewel, athletes are going to play on a full-size field. So it's 100 meters by 60 meters, big full-size equivalent of a soccer field. And this is what it looks like. So I'm assuming I know there's a lot of returning people on the call tonight who might have played U9 and U11 in the past. And you'll notice these field lines aren't totally unfamiliar if you've been around the game for a few years, but they haven't been a part of our game for a few years. World Lacrosse had been making some changes to simplify the lines. And then more recently, they have decided, no, we're going back to what we used to do. So these are the field lines heading into this season. A little bit more complicated for penalty administration, but because the US never got away from these field lines, I'm going to say our athletes are going to be fairly familiar with them. Specifically, if you're curious about what the field markings are called, if you're a coach and you want to know how to address these things with your athletes, just a couple of highlights. So yes, we have sidelines and end lines, one at either end of the field. We do have a shared substitution area. So with this, teams can substitute in, and once a player is fully 2 feet off the field, their teammate can sub on the field at any point in the box. You do not have to tap sticks. You don't have to high five. So long as one person comes off, one person may go on at any point along that 13-meter space. It's a pretty big substitution area. We also have a center line and a center circle that we use for our draw. If you're coming into U13 from the younger levels, the larger field means that we're going to play with 2 restraining lines. So not just one across the center line, but we're going to use 2. On draws, we're actually going to hold for possession. So you'll have 3 athletes in the middle of the field from each team, 1 taking the draw, and then 2 of their teammates lined up around the center circle. And then once somebody has possession of the ball in their stick, or if the ball were to cross one of those restraining lines, then everybody that's stuck behind those lines that are locked, they're allowed to come into play. So once possession is gained, everyone is released from behind those 2 restraining lines. And those are the lines that we're going to use to manage onsides and offsides. Is there anything else I wanted to flag on here? Those are restraining lines, no. So let's get into the field lines themselves that have changed. Actually, there's one other thing. There's also dots. These are used for penalty administration. So this is the goal line extended. It's the long line that extends out from the goal line. Often we shorten it down to be called the GLE. And along this line, in line with it, are going to be dots. The dots are used for penalty administration. So any foul that occurs below the goal line within this area is going to get set up on the nearest dot. Same thing, any foul that occurs in the bottom half beneath the goal line is going to get set up on that dot. And then we have our marking areas. So these are taken directly from the rulebook. This big 15-meter semicircle, in the US, they might call it the 12. They measure from the top of the center of the goal circle, whereas we measure from the goal line. That's the only difference. The goal circle is 3 meters, so that's why they're the same distance. But the 15-meter marking area is this big green space. That's the line that we've been using for the last couple of seasons. But what we've done is we've added back in this 11-meter marking area. So this space is going to be important for our major foul setup. The hash marks kind of give our athletes free shots. On the whistle, defense is live, but otherwise it's like taking a free throw in basketball. And the hash marks are 4 meters away from each other so that there's consistency in our penalty setup. And finally, we have the 15-meter marking area, the 11-meter marking area, and then we've got the 11-meter fan. And the fan itself is specific to the 3 seconds call. This is a call we'll get into later in the Zoom call tonight. But 3 seconds is our equivalent of 3 in the key from basketball. And this is the crucial area in front of the net where most goals are going to be scored from. And so defenders are not allowed to block up this space unnecessarily. We'll come to those fouls down the road, but just for now, it's important to know the difference. The 15-meter marking area, the 11-meter marking area, which is the 11-meter semicircle, and then the 11-meter fan. And then just quickly, our hash marks. So I really love if coaches are able to teach their athletes what these are called, because it helps us set everything up faster, which keeps the game moving faster. We have a center hash, and then on either side, you have the first, second, and third hashes. The third hash used to be referred to as the hanging hash, is officially called the third hash. And this hash on the goal line extended is not used for penalty administration. It's only used to keep players outside of this little triangle down by the goal line. Whenever there is a penalty set up on any of these hash marks, the defensive team is entitled to set up on the adjacent hashes. So if we were going to set up a major foul on, let's say, the second hash here, the defensive players get the adjacent hashes, which would be the first and the third, and everyone's going to clear out of this entire that's a bad semicircle, this entire semicircle area in here. That's what our major fouls are going to look like now. And then the last thing that I would say for coaches, if they're interested, is this space down here. This number 4 is called the corner, anecdotally, and that's where we set up all of our goal circle violations. So that's the only thing you're ever going to set up down here in the corner. The final thing on the field that I really try and get people to be more familiar with is the advantage flag area. So the advantage flag area consists of 3 separate spaces on the field. It's the 15-meter marking area, the goal circle, and the advantage flag area beneath the goal line extended. So that's the space between the dots. In this space, that's where officials are going to pull their flags. So anytime there's a scoring drive within the space, a team's driving to goal, you might see an official pull a yellow flag. And the yellow flag, similar to men's field or similar to hockey when the official puts their arm in the air, all that means is that they have identified a foul while a team was driving to goal. You'll start to see the flag get used at U13 if you haven't seen it before in U9 and U11, because the officials are getting a little bit more familiar with, the tools of the game. And so this is where we start to teach that as a point of implementation. The only thing you need to worry about if within this space is really that flag for these levels. Contact is permitted anywhere on the field, whereas in U9 and U11, it was only permitted in these spaces. I'm sorry, I just need to pull up my presenter notes again. Bear with me, thank you. Yes, so that's this space. That's the advantage flag area. This is going to come up again later. So again, why? The bottom line is really that this sport is growing. There's going to be some growing pains as we try and get to whatever the ultimate version of the game is. And traditionally, women's lacrosse was this really steeped in British prim and proper private school game, and it definitely is not that anymore. At the world lacrosse level, we're really trying to make strides to simplify the rules along all levels, amongst all sectors, while still maintaining really the specific identity that is women's field. So we do appreciate you bearing with us while we get through it. And now let's get into the actual exciting part of the evening, which is the rules and modifications for the U13 and up version of the game. Starting in U13, we tell people you're playing real lacrosse. This is pretty close to what you're going to see played at a world championship. It's pretty close to what's written in the rule book. And you're no longer playing on that modified small field. So you're playing with more people and all those kinds of things. Starting in U11, actually this year, not U13, athletes are going to use a hard yellow rubber ball. So if you are coming out of U11 into U13, this will be your first season with yellow ball. But starting in 2025, U11 is actually going to have a hard yellow ball. The other difference between heading into U13 from the younger levels is that you're going to now play with longer quarters in addition to being on the larger field. So the quarters on Saturdays are 1.5 minutes instead of being just 10 minutes. There's going to be draws in the air, so not on the ground like in the men's game. We're going to pull them above hip level, sticks are back to back, up and away at the whistle. Those draws start each quarter, and we're also going to do draws after each goal is scored. We play with 10 players on the field, so it's sometimes the women's game is called tens. And we're going to play 6 attackers versus 7 defenders. And the 7th defender is usually the goalkeeper in the OWFL. We're also going to ask that teams hold 3 players behind the restraining line. So instead of just holding 2 at the younger level, now in real lacrosse, we're going to hold 3. And then if we're thinking about our defense and our offense, most similar to basketball, we usually play zone or a person-to-person coverage. Starting in U13, you'll start to see some zone defenses for sure. You might also see something like a backer defense, which is a version of a zone with an additional player playing behind the ball. And we have we're back now to having a scoring area like they do in basketball as well with our 11-meter fan. So that's the overview. That's women's field lacrosse, the real version of the game in a nutshell. Player equipment, this stick that is legal for women's field lacrosse is good to go. There are common brands. Definitely the ones we see the most are Gate and STX.
They just happen to be the most popular amongst athletes. They're also probably the most expensive. Brine, String King, there's lots of more affordable options if you're new to the game. And if you're ever looking for a place to buy women's field lacrosse equipment and you don't know where to go in your local area, send me an email to owflofficiating@gmail.com. I'm not personally affiliated with any. I'd just be happy to direct you to a place that's going to sell you something that is legal and high quality. There's tons of stores across Ontario, which is really cool for us. Compared to the men's field or the box lacrosse stick, it is a shallower pocket. So no, you cannot use a men's field or a box lacrosse stick to play women's field. And sticks up until U13 can be cut, although I would not recommend it. I probably should actually take that out. It's really not something to be suggested because then your athlete's getting used to playing with a shorter stick. So we want them to be able to extend, to be able to catch a ball that's loose in the air. And anytime you cut their stick, it's going to put them at a disadvantage. All athletes, in addition to having a stick, and they can't play without one, also have to have a mouth guard that fully covers the teeth, upper teeth. It used to be some really dumb rules, like you couldn't have a white or a clear mouth guard. That is no longer the case. You may have a clear or white mouth guard, so long as it's a mouth guard, that's all we care about. And as of 2024, the OLA has mandated that all of our athletes wear goggles. Again, once you get the copy of the slide deck, feel free to click the link to learn more. There's a version of sport goggles that are also legal, but athletes who are field players, so not the goalie, must wear goggles or sport goggles while they're on the field. For players, we'd recommend running shoes, turf shoes, or cleats. You can't have metal bottoms on the bottom of your cleats. Depends on the playing surface and the playing preference of your athletes. U13 and up definitely will see some turf, but there's also still going to be lots of grass throughout the season this year. And then players may choose to wear like close fitting gloves, but with the weather it is in the summer these days, it's not doesn't tend to be something that we see very often anymore. Coming back to our sticks, there used to be a stick list, and you used to have to check the legality of your stick against a stick list. That is no longer the case. World Lacrosse has eliminated that stick list, just like all the other sectors. But the one way that you really want to make sure that your women's field lacrosse stick is legal is to ensure that the pocket is legal. And by the pocket, I mean the stringing within the head. So what we're looking for as officials in that shallow sidewall is to be able to see the top of the ball over the sidewall. The pocket on the left here in green, that's legal. The official is going to drop the ball in the stick and they'll look at it from one end to the other. And if you can see the ball the whole way across, that stick's going to be fine and dandy. On the right side, you can see the ball, but not over the sidewall. And so when an official looks at this at eye height or at their eye line, that's what they need to see. They need to see the top of the ball. So this stick would be legal. This is an STX stick, but the pocket is not. And so if someone ever requested an illegal equipment check, then this would be illegal. So it's a responsibility of players and coaches to make sure that their pockets stay legal the entire game. And just to show you a little bit of a difference, so this is Annabelle Child, played Team Canada, is from Oakville, played for the Lady Hawks growing up, and now she's at Harvard. Yellow ball, shallow sidewall versus one of the men's pockets that's much deeper. The reason we have different sticks is because we're not wearing equipment. Our checking rules are different, and those are going to get introduced at U13, and you'll use them at U15 and U19. We don't really like beat the crap out of somebody to get the ball back. So you need to be able to check the ball out of someone's stick a little bit easier. Thinking about the goalkeeper, by U13, your team should probably start to not be rotating through goaltenders as much as they might have at the younger levels. Most teams will have a set goalkeeper, but just as a brief overview, goalkeepers are also required to wear mouth guards. They have to wear a lacrosse helmet and a dangling throat guard. The helmet has to be lacrosse specific. In the past, we were able to get away with hockey helmets, but that is no longer the case, particularly at the U13, U11 and above, where we're using a hard yellow ball. It's not insurance like certified. So we need to make sure that our goalies are wearing lacrosse specific helmets. They must wear a chest protector and they must wear padded gloves. And generally speaking, all goalkeeper equipment has to be within 3 centimeters of your body. So it's fine to kind of piecemeal together equipment to make the goalie feel safe, particularly if they're new to the position. We want them to be comfortable. We want them to feel confident and not be afraid of the ball. But all padding has to be within 3 centimeters of their body, except for their helmet. So another Team Canada player, Cass Eckert, also grew up in Oakville, just finishing her senior year at University of Oregon in the NCAA. Cass is legally equipped. And for someone that's ever taken a ball to the shin, it's a choice once you're playing with a hard yellow ball. As a former goalkeeper, I can tell you that my permanent shin bruises are, you know, there's some pain there for sure. So the optional equipment for goalkeepers is shin pads. You could wear a soccer shin pad, something lacrosse specific like this one, and you can choose to wear padded pants. By U13, you won't see a ton of goalies wearing arm protection. It kind of tends to get in the way. It's harder to clear the ball with that big stick. But it's, again, so long as it's within 3 centimeters of your body, it is legal. And then for the chest protection, again, doesn't have to be hockey shoulder pads. We'd like them to wear something lacrosse specific because all the new chest pads have added heart protection. So this is legal lacrosse equipment for goalkeepers in the OWFL. Illegal equipment, generally speaking, looks like box lacrosse equipment. So these big, huge triangular sticks, they're not legal. The big shin pads, the big shoulder pads, this is all definitely going to be more than 3 centimeters off the body. So those are all going to be illegal. Getting into the rules of the game. So one thing we've really tried to do over the last few years is create resources that people can come back to in case they have any questions. So I would urge you to visit owfl.org/officials for tons of digital resources that can help contextualize the rules of the game and remind you what they are. If you're a coach on the call tonight, there are specific modification documents for the levels that you coach. So yes, there is a large 3-page document with all of the modifications all together so that you can see what it's like level to level. But if you only care about U15, because that's what you're coaching, feel free to check out the U15 specific document. The one that I would point most people to, though, is our rule modification summary. It has, again, all of those levels over 2 pages. And then this year, the 3rd page that I added is every rule change from World Lacrosse. Because we're playing real rules at this level, I would highly recommend you guys taking a look at that. We'll get into a couple of the highlights that are changes this year, but not all of them. So definitely recommend that coaches and athletes take a look at the 3rd page to see what's new. And again, linked in here, the U13, U15, U19 specific documents. For coaches specifically, there's also a common questions from coaches document. 2 things I couldn't figure out where else to fit them in the presentation, so I'll just highlight them now. Coaches will be thrilled to hear that you can now call live ball possession timeouts. So previously, coaches could only request a timeout after a goal or when their team had possession of a dead ball. So there was a foul and then they could call a timeout. Now, if their team has possession of the ball and they're outside the advantage flag area, that big blue space around the goals, we can request a live ball timeout through the coach or through the player in possession of the ball. And the other piece that we're getting into this year is that we've eliminated the throw. So if there were ever offsetting or coincidental fouls, we used to have to do like a jump ball. It was awful. It was never consistent. It was super hard to apply. It didn't happen enough for us to be good at it. So now we're going to do alternate possession, very similar to what they're doing in other sports. During the captain's toss, if you win this coin toss, you'll now pick if you want to have first alternate possession or if you want to choose your end to defend. So that's some stuff that you'll see in the common questions from coaches. Feel free to check it out. In women's field, there are changes of possession or turnovers, and then there are 4 types of fouls. And we'll get into each of those in their own. Generally speaking, fouls are served or penalized by moving somebody who fouled 4 meters to the side if it's a minor foul, or going 4 meters behind the ball carrier if it's a major foul. But first, the U13, U15, U19 instances of change of possession are basically just boundary balls. Once you get into Jewel, we're going to play with a shot clock, and there's other instances of a shot clock violation being a change of possession. But for now, the OWFL at this level is only doing boundary balls as change of possession. So if someone steps on the sideline while they're in possession of the ball, that's a boundary ball. It's going to be turned over to the nearest person on the other team. However, if there's a shot, it's still potentially a turnover. But one thing that's really cool about women's field lacrosse is that we encourage our athletes to chase down shots and to chase loose balls. So if there is a shot, you'll hear the official yell shot. And once they've yelled shot, it's actually going to be whoever is closest to the ball, where it goes out of bounds, it's going to be their possession upon the restart. So that's the couple of instances of change of possession in this game. And then our 4 foul categories. So the first foul category is restraining line violations. So these are our offside rules. This is what the field's going to look like. So if we have teal playing against gold, each team has to hold 3 behind the restraining line. If you step on the line, you are offside. So what I usually recommend to players that I've coached is that if they're one of those 6 people above the line and the play comes close to them, yes, they're allowed to reach over and play a loose ball on the ground or in the air, so long as their feet or their body doesn't touch the line. So my recommendation isn't for people to stand, if this is the line, right up to the line. Take a half a step back so that you have space to reach over, so you have inches to play with, and you'll be less likely to have to go offside fighting somebody for a loose ball. And then again, we're playing 6v7, so 6 attackers versus 7 defenders, one of whom might be the goaltender. Starting in U13, you don't have to have a goalie on the field at all times. You really don't see it very often in the OWFL that a team decides to pull their goalkeeper to throw an extra defender on. Defense is not permitted to step into the goal circle to make a save or block a shot. So this happens very infrequently, but it is legal. And this is a pretty typical setup. So you'll see the attack pull right way outside of the 15-meter marking area, usually with 2 set up behind and 4 spread out around the top of the 15-meter marking area. And the defense is probably going to collapse in around the 11. They do this to avoid being inside the 11 where they can get called in 3 seconds. But otherwise, they're going to wait for the attack to come to them. You might see high pressure versions of defense that like to follow out a little bit more, but generally speaking, this is a pretty typical setup for women's field. The second foul category is goal circle violations. So we have this rule in our rule book, it's rule 17, and it says a couple of different things that we'll go through here. So first thing that it says is that defense may move through the goal circle, but may not remain in the goal circle. So it is perfectly legal in women's field for a defender to run through the goal circle. They can do this if they're trying to keep up with an attacker who's running around the circle, or if they're just trying to get to the other side, that's perfectly legal. Defense may also pick up and play a loose ball in the goal circle, or if they're in the goal circle and there's a save is up in the air, they can go for that loose ball and carry it out of the goal circle while they're in possession of the ball. That's perfectly legal. And also attack players, while their feet may not go on or inside the line of the goal circle, they may also reach into the goal circle from outside to play a loose ball. So long as they're not interfering with the goaltender, so you know their stick isn't in their way, we do defer to the goalies in this space. Attack may reach in. And then I get this question a lot. By U13, we've got some incredibly talented athletes playing our game. The attackers who shoot, their feet may, once the ball has crossed the goal line, finish in the goal circle. So if I'm on the outside and I shoot, ball goes in, and then my feet and my momentum takes me into the goal circle, so long as I don't interfere with the goalkeeper, that is legal. But if the goalie made a save or if I miss the net, that's a goal circle violation. It's only going to be legal if the ball goes across the goal line before the attacker follows through into the goal circle. Once the goalkeeper has possession of the ball, which means it's in their stick or it's trapped underneath their stick, they might make a save, the ball falls to the ground and they smother it with their stick. They have 5 seconds to clear the ball from the goal circle. If a defender had possession of the ball in the goal circle, they also have up to 5 seconds. And the officials are going to do a big high arm chop, and they're going to count audibly to 5. So 1, 2. If the official says 5 and the goalkeeper or the defender who had possession of the ball is still inside the goal circle, and that means on the line or 1 foot still in, that is a goal circle violation. The ball has to be out by 5. And just quickly, the goalkeeper may only cover or smother or trap the ball when it's inside the goal circle. So in other versions of the game, you might see the goalie be inside, the ball is outside, and then as people are going to play the ball, the goalie traps it and everybody goes away. That's not legal. If somebody is going for a ground ball outside the goal circle, the goalie may not trap it. Only inside the goal circle may they trap the ball. The goalie is considered in when at least one of their feet is on the line, meaning that if the back edge of someone's heel is on the goal circle line, they're in. So for that 5-second rule, make sure you're both feet out by 5. And once the goalie leaves the goal circle with the ball, they can only return to the goal circle with the ball once they've been played. So if it just prevents teams from 5 seconds, step out, step back in, 5 seconds, step out, step back in. It's not a very fun way to play the game. So they have to be played before they can do that. Played means they've been checked stick to stick, or if they pass the ball to a teammate and get the ball back, they can roll the ball in or throw the ball in the back of their net and follow it afterwards. A goalie or a defender can never just walk into the goal circle with the ball in their stick. And finally, if you're coming from the younger versions of the game, there is a modification in U9 and U11 saying that goalies can only leave the goal circle under certain circumstances, but that is not the case for U13 and above. We're playing real lacrosse where the goalie's decisions have real consequences for the on-field. So goalkeepers may leave the goal circle at any time because there's no passing rules here. They're welcome to do that. The third foul category is minor fouls. These are very ticky-tack fouls, just trying to keep the game fair. A few common ones that you'll see at U13 and above are illegal procedure. So the official is going to do this with their arms. This is the signal. And included in illegal procedure is stuff like illegal equipment. So a stick check is requested and a stick is illegal, like the pocket depth is illegal. Illegal equipment. I've been involved in the OWFL since 2007. We've never been allowed to tape jewelry. Please don't let your athletes get their ears pierced 2 weeks before the start of the season. They will only be disappointed when we tell them to take their earrings out. No jewelry, no taping jewelry. Religious jewelry is the exception. We will allow a player to tape a religious jewelry, but otherwise taping is not permitted. Illegal draw. So we won't get into the details of draw stuff tonight. If you are around on July 14th, the OWFL in conjunction with the Blue Knights are hosting a draw clinic in Oshawa. Those 3 draw takers are some of the best in the NCAA and they're all Canadian. I would highly recommend signing up for that if you have a kid who is a center or takes your draw consistently. They'll have some really cool stuff to teach. Basically, sticks line up, right edge faces the goalkeeper and is down. And a player can stand on either side of their stick to either push or to pull the ball. Sticks have to go up and away and basically not move until the officials whistle. But if somebody were to drop their stick or to not draw or to draw early, that would be an illegal draw. There's also illegal substitution, so having too many athletes on the field. Players may also not throw their sticks. So minor foul throw, you throw your stick to try and prevent a ball from going in the net or from going out of bounds. If you were to throw your stick at a player, we're going to upgrade that to a major. Let's not do that. Let's not throw our stick at people. A new rule change this year, kicking the ball is now legal. So we used to have a body ball rule, but that rule is dead in the water. You are now legally allowed to play the ball with your body. You may kick it to a teammate. You may kick it to open space to yourself. You just may not kick the ball into the opponent's net. The ball still has to go off either the defensive team or from the attacker's stick. And then a goalkeeper goal. So a couple of instances last year with some confusion around this one. The rule is changed. Goalies may now score a goal. Very exciting for the goalies at this level. They still may not cross the far restraining line. So they can shoot from behind that far restraining line, but they may not cross the attacking end restraining line, the one furthest from their goal circle. But if the ball were to go in the net, it's going to count. Handball. So yes, body balls are legal, but handballs, playing the ball with your hand or using your thumb to keep it in the pocket of your stick, those are illegal actions still. A held cross, where someone checks a player's stick and holds the stick down. It doesn't bring the stick up right away. That is a long-time women's field lacrosse foul, still very much a part of the game. But if we talk about fouls that people coming from other sectors or that are new to the game have always been like, why is this in your game? 2 of them are changing this year in a really exciting way. So the first one is our covering rule has changed. It's now called withholding the ball, and we'll go through that in a little bit of detail. And then the next one that we're going to go through is the empty cross check. So this is a rule that has very much changed heading into 2025. And I think it's going to take athletes a little while to adjust to it, but it's totally going to increase the gameplay and increase the speed of the game, which is really fun. We'll go through withholding the ball first. So the covering rule used to say that if somebody was trying to go for a ground ball, you couldn't get your stick or in the way of that ball and prevent them from trying to pick up that loose ground ball. The withholding the ball rule is different. It is taken from sixes, and it's going to allow players to be a little bit more active around the loose ball on the ground. So the rule says if an opponent is able to make a legal play on the ball, so if you are fighting with somebody for a ground ball, a player must not trap a loose ball on the ground with their stick longer than is necessary to control the ball and pick it up in one continuous motion. Raking the ball is permitted. Previously, raking the ball, which is if this is the ball, you use your stick to pull the ball back to scoop the ball through. That was never legal in women's field lacrosse before. Starting this season, that action is perfectly legal. So long as it is done in one motion and you're not trapping the ball is going to be called withholding. But if you do that in one continuous motion and just run through that ground ball, that's going to be perfectly legal. The rule also says a player must not withhold the ball from play with any part of their body. So sometimes you'll see a player, might get tripped up on, and it's not necessarily a tripping foul. They trip over some sticks and they sit on the ball. That's withholding. And again, goalies may still trap the ball, but only inside the goal circle. So that's the withholding the ball rule. The empty cross check rule. So rule 19A9 now reads, a player must not check an opponent's empty cross while the opponent is trying to gain possession of the ball in the air, period. So that's the really exciting change. I know it sounds kind of silly, but previously the rule just said a player must not check an opponent's empty cross, period. Now, empty stick checks when you're going for a loose ball on the ground are going to be perfectly legal. But if somebody is trying to pass to a teammate, you can't bat that player's stick out of the air. That's the rule. What we're going to see, I'm sure, is a lot of people not understanding this year. And because women's field has kind of ingrained this empty stick check foul into our brains, is like, you see that empty stick check, you call it, it's an empty. This year at U13 and above, this is not a foul. It's only that in the pass you can't, or in the air, you can't bat someone's stick out of the way. The other thing to flag here is that it only applies to passes. So on the draw, which is usually in the air and up nice and high, you'll see our athletes jump up for one of those balls. Technically, you can bat somebody's stick out of the way now. So long as you're not batting their stick into their body or it's dangerous in any way, that's legal. So the other thing to flag here, besides the fact that incidental contact between sticks, still fine. If you are dangerously checking someone's stick or roughly checking someone's stick and it's empty, that can still be called a dangerous checking foul. So checks have to still be in control. They can't be into the body or towards the head. But otherwise, empty cross checks on the ground are going to be perfectly legal. So have fun with that one this year. I'm very excited to see how this goes down. I'm very excited about that rule change. Shifting into our fourth and final rule category is major fouls. So these are the ones that, generally speaking, can be divided into two broad categories. If you get the slide deck at the end and you want to check them out, illegal contact, that's mostly our displacement fouls. 50-50 contact in women's field lacrosse is perfectly legal. That is how defense is played. And so that's only been permitted in the advantage like area at the younger levels, but now it's going to be full field ride. You can be in contact. 50-50 is fine. Displacement comes whenever the contact becomes uneven, and who initiates that contact, they're the one that's going to be charged with the foul. So 60-40, that's pretty borderline. 70-30, that's a foul. 80-20, 100-0, those are going to be your illegal contact fouls, generally speaking. And then the other category that we kind of house a lot of fouls underneath is our dangerous check. So unsafe checking practices, stick checking and defensive contact. We're playing real lacrosse, legal anywhere on the field, U13 and above. Modification that we have related to the incidental or the illegal contact is our modification about horizontal sticks. Horizontal sticks are very common in the NCAA or at higher levels of the game as a means to play defense. So I make contact with my stick against an opponent's arm, but it's not what we want to be teaching our younger athletes because it can be a crutch on defense. It can also be very painful if you're an attacker repeatedly receiving an arm, the shaft of a stick across your arm multiple times. So from U9 through U15, as a point of emphasis for our officials this season, is the horizontal stick rule. It's been around for a long time, but it is definitely something that we can enforce a little bit better. Generally speaking, the rule says no horizontal stick to body contact is permitted at any time, be it on a drive to the goal, be it in the midfield. Anytime officials see a horizontal stick being a thing that makes contact with an opponent's arm, we want that to be an automatic call. The intent is to eliminate the middle of the shaft of a defender stick from contacting the ball carrier's arm either once or multiple times in a row. It's always going to be illegal. So we're going to try and get that nailed down as quickly as we can this season. And what we mean by horizontal is technically we use 30 degrees as our marker, but we want to see sticks at 45 and above. So anything under 30 degrees where it's like that hover line, that's going to be an immediate whistle. Anything from about 30 to 35 up to 45, you'll see officials yelling and telling players, sticks up, 27 blue, get your stick up. Well, we're going to try and walk them through to try and not have to blow the whistle every single time if it's borderline. And then once they're up, that's it. We want their sticks to be up nice and high. Some real life examples. So the defender on the left, this is the 30-degree marker in blue. That LIU player perfectly has their stick up nice and high. It's at 45 degrees. That's great defense. That's legal anywhere on the field, so long as there's no displacement. The Akron example in the middle, that's an instance where I'd want to see our officials telling that defender in white, get your stick up, stick higher, get your stick up. And then the example with Syracuse and Virginia on the far right, this is a less than 180 degrees. So this is a less than horizontal stick. This should be an automatic whistle. A second there's contact on the arm initiated by the defender, that should be a call every single time. And then thinking about our checks, U13 being the first time that these athletes are legally allowed to stick check, teaching stick checking legally is really important. A dangerous check is that kind of catch-all foul for illegal checking. The rule says a player must not roughly or recklessly check an opponent's cross or an opponent's stick. This includes, but is not limited to checks that are in the sphere. So I always tell our younger athletes to think of Buzz Lightyear with his helmet on. You cannot have a stick either being poked into that space or checked into that space. You can't check someone's stick into their own sphere. We need to make sure that checks are away from that space around the shoulders and around the head. We cannot check somebody into the body. So if I'm holding my stick this way and someone's check comes across into my body, across my chest or my stomach, that's going to be a foul. We need to make sure that stick checks are away from the head and neck. So you'll hear a lot of coaches teach the Nike swoop, the check mark, the down and away. That's great. The swoosh isn't my favorite because it teaches a hold. We want to get stick checks down and then up so that they're not fouling. And then any check that causes the ball to go towards the ball carrier, those are going to be fouls as well. So not all big checks are fouls and not all upwards checks are fouls. It's only the ones that cause someone's stick or the ball to go into their body in an unsafe way. That's where those are going to get called. And again, there's a video linking dangerous checks and legal checks, in addition to swipes. Swipes being our huge uncontrolled, our equivalent of a slashing call, whether or not it makes contact with a body, those are all covered under this deck. And again, that swipe. A player must not make a long sweeping motion with an extended arm from high to low across the body at their opponent with their stick, regardless of whether or not contact is made with an opponent's cross. And this is one of those mandatory cards. There's 4 of them in the game. If an official sees a swipe, doesn't matter if it was intentional or not. Often you'll see the person who committed the swipe kind of lose their footing or follow through to the ground. Maybe their stick touches the ground as they follow through. That's going to hopefully be called every single time. That's a mandatory card. The most women's field lacrosse specific foul that I can call on is the shooting space foul. This one is very misunderstood, so we always like to talk about it in these calls at all level. It is a foul, U9, right through to jewel, right at the highest level of the game. And this is a safety rule that's going to encourage attackers to still drive to goal, even when there's somebody in their lane, because they're going to know that a capable official will call the shooting space rule. So the shooting space rule is in effect when the attacking team is in possession of the ball within the 15-meter marking area. So they're above the goal line. They're within 15 meters of goal in that big semicircle. And the rule says a defender must not block or guard the goal for the purpose of obstructing the lane between the shooter and the edges of the goal circle. So I'll show you what this looks like. And basically, obstructing the shooting space, so being in shooting space, denies the attacking team the opportunity to shoot safely. A defender is not in shooting space if they are legally marking an opponent within a stick length. So if I was playing defense and I was in the shooting lane, but I could reach out and touch the person I'm in charge of, if we're playing person-to-person defense, the person I'm in charge of, if I can touch them with my stick, I'm not in shooting space. Or if I'm standing beneath the goal line extended, I can't be called on shooting space. I might be within the edges of the goal circle, but I'm not in the shooting lane above the line. So this is what that looks like. The yellow dots represent a shot being taken. So any person standing within the edges of this dotted line from this shot, this person would be in shooting space. People standing beneath the goal line extended, yes, they're within that cone, but they're beneath the goal line, so they're not in shooting space. I'll show you what this looks practically speaking. So this is an example from Towson, the World Championships in 2021 in Maryland. Team USA playing against Team Canada. And here we clearly have a Canadian defender in shooting space. So this is an unsafe situation for this defender, because this shooter wants to shoot. We want to provide opportunities for athletes to shoot the ball, but we also want to not have to wear equipment. So this shooter is within the 15-meter marking area for sure. They're actually inside the 11-meter fan in this picture. and the defender is outside of a stick length of their nearest opponent, they're actually split between two far opponents. And they're within the cone from the shooter to the edges of the goal circle. So this defender 100% is in shooting space. Coming to the other side of the field, we have Team Canada on attack, just stepped onto the 11-meter marking area line. And again, we have a defender in white this time, completely split between this defender in the center and this defender, or this attacker low and this attacker in the center. They're obviously not within a stick length. We can see their stick length here. That's the arm and stick length. If somebody was standing right there at the edge, they'd be fine. They're not in shooting space if they're within a stick length. But right now, they are definitely outside of a stick length, and they're between the shooter and the edges of the goal circle. This is a shooting space violation. The video on shooting space also gets into talking about dangerous propels. If this defender was here, but this shooter decided to still shoot the ball, that is a yellow card. You cannot shoot when somebody is in your lane. So as a coach, my recommendation here would be teach your players, teach your athletes how to pump fake. If they see someone in their shooting lane, teach them that large cradle where they're popping the ball up and bringing it back. It's a shooting motion without the release to show the official, get this girl out of my shooting lane. That's what we want to see here. And hopefully the whistle's coming quickly enough that nobody's endangered by a shot. Because shooting space is an immediate whistle, an official can't put their arm up in the air, they can't flag this, it has to be called right away. Sometimes there's some really crappy situations where a shooter has released the ball, they didn't realize someone was in their shooting space, and there's a goal scored. So what the World Lacrosse rules have implemented is this shooting space exception, which for us is in place at all levels of the game. If the whistle is blown for a shooting space violation between the moment the shot has been released and one of these scenarios, there's going to be different outcomes. So, shot is taken, whistle is blown for a shooting space violation, and a goal is scored, the goal is going to count. So coaches and goalkeepers on this call, you want to play to the ball, not to the whistle in women's lacrosse. The whistle does not kill the play in this one exception. So make sure that you're always playing to the save, not to the whistle. Again, shot is taken, whistle goes for a shooting space violation, the ball goes in the goal, that goal is going to count. On the other side, we want to reward good goaltending. So if a shot is taken, a whistle is blown for a shooting space violation, and the goalkeeper makes the save, or the ball hits the post, that's going to count as a save. We're going to restart play with the goalie in the goal circle, and they'll have, at the whistle, 5 seconds to clear the ball out. The third instance that could happen here is that shooter shoots, whistle is blown for a shooting space violation, ball misses the net. In that scenario, we're going to set up at the nearest hash mark. It's the shooter's ball back, and they'll get a free position set up on the nearest hash mark. So those are those three scenarios in the exception. And the other rule that goes hand in hand that we've kind of been alluding to all night is this 3 seconds rule. So 3 seconds, if shooting space is only in place in the 15-meter marking area, 3 seconds takes effect when the attacking team crosses the ball over into their attacking end, past their attacking restraining line. And the rule says a defender must not remain in the 11-meter fan, so that's the fan shape cut in, for more than 3 seconds unless they are marking an opponent, again, within a stick length. A defender who is marking an unmarked opponent standing directly behind the goal is exempt from 3 seconds, but is not exempt from shooting space. So if we go back to our shooting space example, yes, this person's in shooting space, but they're right in the middle of the marking of the 11-meter fan. So as an official, I got to think, how long have they been standing there? The balls come at least 12 meters from the restraining line down. So that's a while. Yes, this player is fast who ran the ball in, but how long has this player been standing in this space, gumming up the space between the shooter and goal? If this wasn't obstruction, if this wasn't shooting space, probably a 3 seconds call regardless. They're definitely outside of a stick length. The other reason I want to show this one is because ignore the scenario here, but if we just look at the goal circle and this defender, if let's say the ball was back, or let's say the attacker that this defender was responsible for was behind the goal, they're exempt from 3 seconds if the attacker is between the edges of the goal circle. So this attacker behind can go back and forth in this space, and this defender can go back and forth in this space, and they're not in 3 seconds. But as soon as somebody goes to shoot, whether I'm facing the ball or not, I am still eligible for shooting space. So if you're teaching your athletes to not chase their attacker behind the goal, to still have a presence in here, that's totally fine, but make sure that for safety reasons, they're aware that they're still eligible for shooting space. And again, this defender definitely outside of a stick length. How long have they been in this space? If it's 3 seconds or longer than 3 seconds, then this is going to be their foul. In this situation, we'd go with the immediate one. So the official is going to call shooting space, but maybe their partner had a flag up for 3 seconds, something we see rather often. Once we're thinking about that 4th foul category, major fouls, there's an upgrade to those major fouls. And so in women's lacrosse, we use cards as our upgrade feature. 2 cards are used in the women's game, whereas 3 are used in the sixes game. We have a yellow card. That's a 2-minute foul or a 2-minute penalty. And a yellow card is given to somebody for their first upgrade situation or their first card. The mandatory cards that you'd receive a yellow card for are a check to the head, a swipe, a dangerous follow through, which would be hitting somebody with your stick as you were shooting or as you were passing, and a dangerous propel. So that's shooting into that shooting lane when there's people in there. It doesn't have to touch anybody, the ball. If it missed somebody or if somebody had to duck, that's going to be a dangerous propel call. So all of the 4 of those are mandatory cards. You would receive a yellow card for any of those actions. And then there's also discretionary cards. So illegal contact is a major foul where, yes, contact is horizontal. That's a foul, just a regular major foul. But if I cross-check somebody, my stick starts off the body and ends on the body, that's going to be upgraded, hopefully, to a yellow card for illegal contact. Players can also receive discretionary yellow cards for repeated major fouls. Their team will not stop making illegal contact fouls. Okay, it's unsafe. We need to upgrade. And they can also get a yellow card for a misconduct. Misconduct being kind of one of our points of emphasis this year. That's any unsportsmanlike behavior from a coach, from an athlete on the field. They can receive a misconduct card. If someone received a second yellow within the same game, so the 2-minute yellow card they receive, their team's going to play down for 2 minutes and they can come back onto the field when that 2-minute card is expired. But if somebody receives a second yellow within the game, they are going to be shown a yellow and a red card together. And the red card that they're shown signifies that they are expelled from the game. So you may not have 2 yellow cards in the game and be allowed to continue to play. Your team will play down in that scenario for 5 minutes, and you may not return to the game if you're the one that received that second yellow card. People often think that officials are upgrading fouls to a 5-minute, but that is not a choice they're making. It's automatically a yellow-red if you receive a second yellow card. And then finally, players can also receive a straight red card, just like in soccer. It's a 10-minute violation. All of these, the 2-minute, the 5-minute, the 10-minute, they are non-releasable. So you can score as many goals as you need to in that time. It will never end the card early. Play the 10 minutes or the 5 minutes, the 2 minutes right to the end. This is for pretty reprehensible play. That could be targeting somebody, that could be abusive language. There's a whole video on misconduct that we urge you to look into. And a red card's also going to come with a 1-game suspension in the next full-length game. So that's our cards. taking this and moving forward, in 2025, the OWFL is also going to be trialing a purple card. So we've taken this from volleyball. What we were looking for was a way to tangibly deal with spectator issues, not just against officials, but against athletes as well, and wanting to maintain a really welcoming and safe space at the fields for those participants. The purple card will be for spectators who are being an issue at the field. My hope is that none of our officials have to use this card. You can go a whole season without having a spectator issue, but increasingly there have been issues that we want to just have a means to manage. So we'll be trialing this year. There's 3 stages. 1, an official might stop the clock and just turn and say to a spectator, please stop. I need you to stop what you're doing. If that didn't work, and if anything continued, or if something happened right away that was bad, the official could stop the clock, turn around, and just award a purple card. That penalizes the team for 2 minutes. And then the 3rd stage would be a purple and a red card shown together. So like with an athlete, we're going to expel that spectator from the field, from the playing game. And they may not return for the remainder of the day. The spectators team is penalized for 2 minutes in that scenario as well. We're trying to create some accountability on the sidelines. Coaches will help enforce this for us. So it's not just going to be, the 14-year-old on your kid's game, or the 15 or 16-year-old on your kid's game. We're really trying to ensure there's a positive environment staying around the field. You'll see things over the next couple of weeks come out on our social media about the Stay On Side campaign. That's all related to respect in sport stuff that we've initiated for this season. So feel free to take a look if you're interested in what that full policy looks like for 2025. And I believe it's the last thing I wanted to go through tonight was self-start. So we've gotten through our, we've talked about our fouls, and now I want to talk about kind of how the game keeps pace of play going. So when a player is fouled outside the advantage flag area, they may do this thing that we call self-start, which means that they're going to restart the play of the game on their own without waiting for a subsequent whistle from the official. There are 4 instances where a player is not allowed to self-start, and otherwise they can self-start anywhere on the field at any time in the game. So those 4 instances are if the clock is stopped for a timeout, because we have to reset everybody, they have to come back on the field. A player can't just start and go at their own time. So they'll have to wait for a whistle to restart. If there is an illegal draw foul, the players can't self-start. Usually the ball goes very far away, so we have to get the ball back, and that's why they can't self-start in that situation. If there's an offside or restraining line violation, players can't self-start because the officials need a second to correct the offside. So whoever's awarded the ball will need to wait for a whistle. And then any foul occurring in the advantage flag area. So that big blue space around the goal, below in the goal circle or above the goal circle, in the 15-meter marking area. Any foul in there requires specific setup. So players may not self-start in those spaces. They have to wait for a whistle. We saw. All boundary balls at all times during the entire game are always a self-start now. This is new this season. Players entitled to the ball move 2 meters, like 2 big steps in, stand and go. That's what self-start means. If somebody gets fouled, they may not just continue to run through if there's a whistle. They do have to stand and then go. That's a self-start. And new this season also is that if the ball goes out of bounds between the dots behind the goal, we used to have to make the athlete go to the nearest dot to restart, but we no longer have to do that. To keep things going quickly, just like anywhere else on any other boundary, the athlete who's entitled to the ball comes in 2 meters and can self-start from there. And then the last thing, if anybody on the call tonight is going to be doing some timekeeping for us this summer, we have made it more exciting for you. In U13, the clock stops under 30 seconds in all 4 quarters. because they're playing with 10-minute quarters on Sundays. For U15, U19 on Saturdays, the clock stops under 30 seconds in Q1, Q2, and Q3, and 2 minutes of Q4. So we call those periods the stop time period. And in both of those scenarios, the whistle is going to stop on every single whistle that happens in there, or sorry, the clock is going to stop on every single whistle that happens in that time. But now if somebody wants to self-start and legally they're allowed to self-start in stop time, we're just going to let the clock restart with them moving. So timekeepers are going to have to pay attention from the sidelines. And if the ball just starts to run, they're going to restart the clock. So that is self-start simplified. And that's all I wanted to take you through tonight. So our goals, again, were to try and contextualize the game of women's field and our sport's unique history. I was looking to provide an overview of the OWFL and our programs, and our mentorship stuff like that. Introduce U13, U15, and U19, including modifications specific to these levels of play. Build avenues for spectators and coaches to inform themselves and contribute to a positive environment for our athletes and officials on the field. And finally, to foster an appreciation for this phenomenal game. The last activity that I want to take you through is we're going to go to owfl.org/officials. Pardon my typing. And I will show you a place to find the differences between U13, U15, and U19. There aren't many, and they're highlighted in the rules and modifications section. So if we go into the OWFL rule mod summary document, we'll see U13, U15, and U19. And the common rules that they share are listed here. So please feel free to check this out. If you have, let's say, a daughter playing U13 and U19, and you're like, are there any differences between those two? There's a couple, right? So please do feel free to take a look at this. The differences from U13 to U15 are the length of the quarters. And then the differences from U15 to U19 is the horizontal stick to body contact rule is only in play up to U15. So take a look at this document if you're interested. If you're curious to see a full list of all of the rule changes for this year, they're on page 3. But that's it. My request going forward is that we did not cover every foul. We did not cover every game concept. Or we did not, and we did not cover every exception. So as a rule for my officials, I always try and tell them that they should never start a sentence with Hannah said, and then try and explain something potentially incorrectly. So without being absolutely sure that I said something, please don't say, well, Hannah said. Know that I'm a student of the game too. I make mistakes, and I very much rely on these resources that we've created to explain the game well. So hopefully you took something away from tonight's call. Very excited for the OWFL season in 2025 and appreciate you spending some time with us tonight. This call and the slide deck will be shared this week, so stay tuned for that. Everyone will get copies, and I wish you and your team all the best of success in 2025. Good luck. If there's any other questions, I'm very happy to take those, but I will end the recording now.